Howdy, everybody. Coming to you cordless from Minneapolis. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night for Monday, December 9th, 2024. If you listen to the show at all, you know how much I like to bitch about the weather in Minneapolis, because 4 months of the year, it's terrible. Everything you've heard is all true. 4 months of the year here is absolutely awful, but I have to say, the last weekend, so it's the first week of December, it's been in the 40s here, which is downright balmy. Basically, anything above freezing, 32 degrees here, is warm. I refuse to wear a coat, so I'm good. And we had a really nice weekend. We did. I hope you did too. Our guest tonight is Don Zorro, intelligence operative and lover of women, as I like to call him. He's got a lot of opinions on everything. Friend of the show. You know him and you love him. So let's get to Don right now before we waste our time. We'll be back right after these messages. Stay tuned, please. Hi, all. I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. All right, joining us now from a secure location, which we cannot divulge, and we cannot divulge what he does or who he's from or wherever. It's Don Zorro, intelligence operative and lover of women. How are you, Don?
I am well. I'm looking into the full moon and being inspired to try and do good. But instead, I think I'm just going to go have a glass of rum. I know. I can do a lot better with that.
Yeah. Rum? Really? Rum?
Oh, yeah. Straight from Havana.
Oh, man. That's like, I
have connections. Zorro has connections.
That I know. I know that for sure. I know. Well, we got a lot to talk about here, and I know what you like to talk about. First thing first, Daniel Penny got off today, the guy who, restrained that mentally disturbed man in the subway in New York City. And the reason I'm asking about this is because I've had a lot of ties to New York City over the years, but you grew up there and you went to school there, and I haven't been there in a while. Do you have any? I mean, is the city? Have you been there recently?
Well, just let me tell you that I left a very long time ago, and one of the reasons that I was fairly happy to leave was because New York had become a toilet in the late 1970s. By then, it was a drug-infested toilet with amazing things going on, but nobody wanted to deal with the crime. It became worse with Dinkins, and then I started to visit New York once again, year by year, after Giuliani had taken office. And what I noticed was the second year that he was in office and I came back to visit, people had smiles on their faces. The filth was gone from the buildings. The filth was gone from the subways. People didn't look like they wanted to kill you for asking them what time it was. People in restaurants were polite. Times Square had gone from this den of iniquity to suddenly it was Disneyland. And I was ever so grateful. Then came de Blasio. And between him and the tenure that had been taken over in Washington, D.C. with Biden, the malaise that Jimmy Carter spoke about so ineloquently had returned to New York in spades. It was absolutely just, again, a place where wonderful things happened, but you paid a price for going there. And of course, the final knife in the coffin was George Floyd. My point in all of this is that now that Mr. Penny has been rightfully vindicated, it is in large part, I think, part of the subtle part of the Trump effect. You're going to see the Trump effect take place over this nation very gradually and very winningly, as Charlie Sheen would say. You're going to see a return to a kind of normalcy and just common sense that begins with this trial. Whereas we all know that if this had happened a year and a half ago, the guy would have been found guilty. This innocent Marine who just wanted to do the right thing a year and a half ago would have been found guilty. But people are now officially sick of it. As I predicted about 3 years ago, people are now sick of it. The cracks in the left armor have turned into that armor falling into pieces. And let me tell you, we are in for some good times. And this trial is the first indication to me that we are. So,
well, John, you and I have been talking about this for a long time, and I totally agree with you. But here's my question. Why? There was an article in Red State this morning about, and I can't remember which columnist wrote it there, about the fact that that since the election, okay, it's been about a month, since the election, there seems to be the divide in the Democratic Party is fairly large. In other words, you have the moderate Democrats who say, no, we got to start appealing to the people. It's obvious why we lost. And then you have the wackos who really want to double down on this. And I don't understand, what is their problem? I mean, it's like, down has been up and up has been down forever. And so Alvin Bragg, somebody said it's really true. I mean, it's like basically he tried to make certain that no good deed in America was ever done ever again. And I don't understand how they can. Well, the guy in the red state, he said that their problem is that they regard politics as a religion. So in that sense, it's a cult. But why? How come these people can't get this through their heads? I don't understand.
Well, you're talking now about a part of the Democrat demographic that is now shrinking and shrinking. Now, let me just put it to you this way. Have you ever operated a gas-powered weed whacker?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. When that weed whacker runs out of gasoline, what is the last thing that it does? It starts to whine and the pitch goes up and up and up, and then it stops. And what we are experiencing right now is the Democrat weed whacker is just doing everything it can to survive and to be as loud as it can, while the rest of America, as in that scene in 12 Angry Men when the racist guy is just going off and going on, one by one, they all turn their backs on him. And we are all turning our backs, even the Democrats, the so-called moderate ones, even they can't stand it anymore. Remember what happened with the vote. We had the largest number of black men turning away from the Democrats. We had the largest number of Latinos turning away from black men. What's left for them? The rest of the wackos, the ones that are going to make the big whining noise before the machine runs out of gas.
Don, in the history of American radio, I don't think anybody's ever equated a political party with lawn equipment. I don't think that analogy's ever been made.
It was either that or compare them all to one big hole.
Yeah, well, so your point is very well taken. And it's been, there's a lot of reasons they lost, but a lot of people have said that it came down to the male black vote and the Hispanic vote. And here, for people who don't know, I mean, you're Hispanic, so and you've been going on in this we've been doing these radio shows off on for 5 years. So you talked like 4 years ago about the fact that nobody in the Hispanic community ever used the term Latinx. As a matter of fact, I think the last poll I saw was that 95% of the Hispanic people in America hated it, and yet they keep. It's the stupidest thing ever. It's like, how do you go ahead?
I have to say, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it recently. Not in anything in the places where one would expect. I have not seen it. So I think that we're now approaching more like 97%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they've given it up. It's obviously at this point they've given it up,
Yep.
But
Yep.
why did they get this idea in the first place? I mean, I know I'm asking rhetorical questions here, but I'm trying to understand.
I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer, because all of this, you have to remember, all of these decisions have their roots in the whole trans thing. Many of the decisions to take gender out of stuff was a nod to the whole trans movement. And speaking of people that are now going to be whining like crazy in the manner in which I described earlier, this is going to be epic, because Rachel Levine is going. That nutbag, the bald nutbag who wears a dress, he's already gone. All of these, that army guy with wearing the dog helmet, or whatever the hell he's going to be gone. These people are all going to be disappearing and making very loud, rude noises on their exit.
Yeah, and they thought J.D. Vance was weird.
Oh yeah, exactly. That was a gift from heaven that the Minnesota governor. The hell is it? He's my governor. I don't even know his name.
Waltz.
The hell is his name?
Waltz.
Yeah. Waltz. Even he, gave us this wonderful gift of irony by starting to decide that they were going to parlay the word weird into something that was just going to win an election for them. So, worst decision ever, Timmy.
Don, you and I did about over 200 weekend shows at Conk News, and I'll tell you,
Really?
Yeah. Actually, I think it was about 200 of them, and I think you were one of the 3 regular panelists, and I think the one thing I remember from all those shows is now you and I are about a month apart in age. You turned to me and we're on the air and you said, we're talking about the trans thing. And you said, Jim, how many trans people have you known in your entire life? And we're both at that point about 67 years old, maybe. And I said 2, and you said the same thing, 2. And the importance of that is that there's no one wants to acknowledge the subtlety of this or anything in American politics. So this is one thing that really bothers me. There's no exactness or subtlety at all. And what I've maintained, and I think you totally agree with me, and that is the problem with the trans issue is transgenderism is real, but very, very few people, for lack of a better term, suffer from it. And even still, the vast majority of the people who say they're trans are mentally ill. So you were talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the American public,
right.
And most of those people are not even correctly diagnosed. Their
Exactly.
self is wrong.
because what there really is for a large part is this autogynephilia thing where these folks just have this nice, weird fascination for wearing women's clothes and getting off on it. And so they have, because misery loves company, and because the only way that they have of reproducing is by having folks join them, even if they're not legit, they welcome them in. So you see now the gays and lesbians are really looking at their shoes very angry.
Oh, they're revolting. That's right.
That they let these folks be part of the whole alphabet club.
Right.
And they never should have done. In fact, you and I have talked about this. The only alphabet there should be is L and G. I don't think the bisexuals count, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I don't think they count, because who cares whether you're bisexual?
Right.
You know, it's one thing to come out at your job and say, okay, I'm lesbian, I'm gay, male. That's one thing. If you're bi, who cares? What does that entitle you to? And so this whole thing with all of the letters is going to go away. And it's just going to go away the same way that Latinx did. People are just going to get up once again, like that scene in 12 Angry Men. They're going to turn their backs, and they're just going to leave them there whimpering, crying, unheard. And that's the way it should be.
Joe Biden is going to go down in history as the worst president, other than James Buchanan ever. I mean, he's leaving office with the worst approval rating since measurements started. And
what do you have? What are the numbers you're hearing now?
I think 24% is the number I heard, because 27.
Shut up.
No, I'm true.
Are you serious?
27% was Harry Truman. And that was up until now the lowest, and that's the reason I remember the number. And the amazing thing is, Truman's legacy has vastly improved since he left office, and but that's not going to happen to Joe. Matter of fact, if anything, I think it's going to be the opposite. What was James Carville was talking about the fact, people over time people realize the good things Joe did. I don't think they will, because there's so few of them.
Well, what good did he do? I mean, he happened to be at the right place at the right time. It was because it was post-COVID, and the jobs came back, not because of anything that he did. God help.
Well, you're right.
He did this. He didn't do anything.
He didn't.
He just happened to be there, and that's fine. That's his prerogative. If he's a sitting president, okay, fine. But when he looks at himself in the mirror, he has to know he didn't have anything to do with it. But
hold it. Just saying, Don. Does he know? That's the thing. I don't know if he knows, and I'm not talking about dementia here per se. I don't know if he's delusional or what. But sometimes,
Joe has bigger things to worry about. He's got bigger things to worry about, and right now, the big thing that he's got to worry about is this beyond brilliant ad that Trump has put out based on the photo of Jill Biden looking at him.
It's funny.
And then he's saying, a scent so good that even your enemies.
And I gotta say, she was looking at him awfully lovingly. I mean, that's really, it's like two people at the prom, she's finding out what she already knew. The guy's, it's all politics. The guy's not a bad guy. He's charming and he's funny, and he knows how to make a person feel good and all that. But the best meme that I saw is, find yourself a woman that looks at you the way Jill Biden looks at Donald Trump. That's right. Don, we have to end it here. Man. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're done for today.
Worries.
So thank you so much, man. Thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure talking to you. Really appreciate it.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thanks, man. You take care. Bye-bye. We'll be back with part 2 of our show right after this. Stay tuned, please. Part 2 of Jim Peters at Night. I'm Jim Peters for Monday, December 9th, 2024. I want to thank Don Zorro again for joining us. He's a busy man, off doing very important clandestine things. Seriously, we can't talk about like where he's from or where he's calling from because he has what's called security clearance. So we don't discuss it. Any rate, now if you've listened to the show before, you know I like to go off on, I'm obsessed with the media because I'm in the media. I don't know if you folks have followed this. If you listened to the show before, as I was saying, you've heard me talk about this, about the fact that since the election, well, and actually before that, this has actually gone on for 2-3 years now, but since the election, CNN's and MSNBC's ratings are completely in the dumper. Totally. I mean, I can't even exaggerate to you how bad they are. Now, you have to understand that when Joe Biden took office in January 2021, since that time, I think there's been only 1 month of an exception. CNN's ratings have dropped like 40 months in a row, to the point where now their high point during prime time, they're not even drawing 400,000 people. Now, let me put that in some sort of perspective. If you live in a major city in the United States, the leading local newscast at 10 p.m. gets more than 400,000 people watching. Nobody's watching. I've said this in the past. On cable television, anything under 1 million viewers is zero. And they're less than half of that. And so, and MSNBC is not faring much better. Now, they never have had ratings that well, and they've dropped since the election still, but they're completely, these entities are going to fold. There's nothing else they can do. MSNBC's been put on the sales block. Comcast wants to get rid of it, so they're willing to sell it. And if they sell it, they probably have to change the name, which the name goes back to 1982 or 92, I think it is. MSNBC, it was run by Microsoft and NBC, hence the name, MSNBC. But it's always been tied to NBC News. And the one thing, because their ratings are so bad and people have such a terrible negative connotation to this channel now, NBC doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I'm sorry, NBC News. They don't want to have anything to do with it at all. So they want to cut it loose. And in the process, it'll probably change its name. Everybody over there is worried about losing their job. They should be. I mean, they're paying Rachel Maddow $25 million a year, and she just took a $5 million pay cut. They're paying her $30 million a year for doing one show a week. One show a week. An executive over there said, well, they had to pay her because she's ratings Viagra is what she said. That was a quote. No, they don't. No, they don't have to pay her. You can save yourself $25 million. Cut her loose. Now, granted, she is the most popular thing on that channel. That's true. But still, nobody's watching. It's like, 10 times 0 is 0. What do you got to do? Meanwhile, Meek and Joe on Morning Joe and my former boss from Con News, Jeff Meyer, he still watches that, loves to make fun of it. They go down to see Mar-a-Lago to see Trump after calling him a fascist for 3 years and Hitler and a Nazi. And everybody on the channel goes nuts. And they say, well, we have to be realistic. We have to deal with the people who are in office. And actually, I mean, I really hate to give them credit, but that's kind of true. I mean, this whole thing's been a dumpster fire since they started because basically it's what I call the Regis effect on television. Okay, and this is the way this works. So Regis Philbin did that show live for like 20 years. He was the man until he retired. He retired at the age of 82, and it was that 2011 or something like that. And he passed away a few years ago, shortly after. So Regis had a series of co-hosts. First it was Kathy Lee Gifford, then it was Kelly Ripa. Was there somebody in between? No, I don't think there was. No. And before then it was Carolina Ferrera or whatever the hell her name was. But the thing is, when Kelly or Kathy took the night off or the morning off, and they were stuck and they had to find a co-host at the last minute, they always asked his wife Joy. Now Joy's a professional performer. She used to be, which kind of dates all of us. She was a big bang singer. No, No, she was a big band singer. So, but she, so she was a professional. She knew her way around. She knew how to deal with the camera, and they would come out and they would talk. But the problem wasn't her professionalism. The problem was they've been married for 40 years. They got nothing to talk about. you know, I mean, and if you've been married, I've been married for 35 years now. Unfortunately, my wife and I are both chatterboxes. I know she wants me to shut up, which is she loves the fact I do the job because now don't have to bother talking to her. But they would have nothing to talk about. So my point is, you have to keep a little tension, social tension, and maybe even sexual tension between you and the co-host. So what does Josh Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski do? Well, after being out of the year for 5 or 6 years, they decide to go off to a hotel and have sex. And then they end up getting married. Okay, fine. They're married. They're in love. That's great. But the show, as far as the show is concerned, the show goes in the dumper. I've always said this, and Jeff thinks I'm crazy, that when that show started, which is now about 15 years ago, for about the first 5 years, it was one of, if not the best single talk show on television, because you had him, who's still playing the part of the conservative, and her, a diehard liberal. I mean, she grew up in the White House. Her father was oh God, can I pronounce his name? Zbigniew Brzezinski, the Secretary of State for Jimmy Carter, and her and Amy Carter as children literally were playing on the White House grounds, literally. So she's been around forever. She's a dyed-in-the-wool liberal. So they would argue. They were on the air. They would scuffle, and that was great, and it was fantastic. And then I don't know, somehow, I guess they decided they were in love or something. And now they're on television together, and they're married, and they're in love. They got nothing to talk about because she has his testicles in her purse. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So, well, at any rate, they go down to see. They're trying to rescue their careers. Right. And good for them. Cause, I guess they can't live off the $10 million a year they've been getting paid for the last, they didn't bank any of it or something. I don't know, gambling problems or whatever. So, they're trying to, basically trying to rescue what's left. And everybody on the channel, all those other diehard liberals are giving them a hard time. This is not going well for anybody. CNN has the same problem. Well, first of all, and would you explain this to me? I mean, I'm a student of broadcasting. You should never have more than 5 people on the air, on camera at any one time. And so CNN, they have these huge, enormous panels, like 12 and 13 people, and Anderson Cooper's going around the desk trying to get everybody's opinion. It's nuts. No one can keep track of it. Nobody's cogently giving any personality to the issue. They don't have any time. It's like, so just stop that. But they're in the dumper too. And you can't, the moral of the story is you can't lie to the American public over and over again and still think you're going to come out of this okay. I mean, you've completely blown your trust as a journalism source. And more people are finding that out all the time. I mean, I still have friends who swear by the New York Times, even Republican friends, and they haven't figured out that the Times is lying to you 70% of the time. They haven't figured that out yet. And I don't bother to tell them because, I'm the weird guy on the radio and they don't want to hear from me. So, but anyway, this is not going well for any of these people at all. We're going to take a break here for commercial. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay with us. Hi, all. Jim Peters again for Conk News. Let me tell you one of the greatest things about Conk News. It's free. It's completely and totally free. You don't need to register. You don't need to log in, subscribe, none of that stuff. Sure, they run a few ads on the front page, but if you're an old fogey like me, you might actually appreciate this because when you check out Conk News at conk.com, you'll probably notice that it's the closest thing to an old-fashioned hard copy newspaper that you'll find online. The latest up-to-the-minute news from 75 high-quality sources collected every 3 hours, all laid out with photos and headlines directly from the articles. And when you click on a story, you go directly to that story. No ad page, no interstitial page, none of that stuff. This is the way online news is meant to be. And did I mention that it's completely free? Seriously, how much of the stuff in America is free now, right? That's of quality anyway. So check this out for yourself. It's at conk.com, CONK.com. Conk News. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jim Peters, and you're listening to Jim Peters at Night for Monday, December 9th, 2024. So Mark Zuckerberg, the guy who owns Meta, and he does basically own it. I think he controls like 62% of the stock, making him one of the richest people in the world, has decided to he also has decided to cozy up to Trump because Trump's going to be president. Oh my God, who would have thought that would ever happen? But the other thing that he's also interested in, and we've talked about this on the show in the past, and that is you have to understand this. So AI is going to be the new thing that revolutionizes everything. It's basically the version of where the web was in the 1990s. But the thing that you maybe don't realize is that AI as a technology burns up a massive amount of electricity. I mean, like if you have Copilot or Gemini or one of those things on your smartphone or on your desktop or whatever, and ask it a question, the answer to that question takes about 5 times as much electricity as it does doing a regular ordinary web search. 5 times. Now, and web searches already burn up a lot of electricity. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but both Facebook, Meta, Google, they have these data centers all over the world, and they usually build them next to rivers because, well, not because they necessarily need the hydroelectric power per se, although sometimes that's part of it. They need the river water to cool these facilities because the damn hardware produces so much heat. You're generating your stupid vacation photos so your friends can see them, that they need the river water just to help facilitate that. That's the reason they do that. The other thing is, I've never really talked about this much, but at some point, John Dvorak is a longtime tech columnist. I mean, he was writing in the 1990s. I don't know if I think he's retired now, but he said this like 15 years ago, and that is at some point, web searches, Google will have to give up the ghost because, okay, so the way this works is that Google does a mimic. They do a shadow version of the web in their own servers. So the reason they can search the web so fast is because they basically copy everything that's on the web. Now, they don't copy everything. Matter of fact, they only copy a small part of it. They copy the stuff people are actually looking for based on their algorithms and the search results. So, but if you have a website of any public, renown whatsoever, I mean, even only like your family's going to it, they have a copy of it. So instead of searching the web, which is very time consuming, and also because you have to actually go out on the web to do it, they load the copy of your website, your stupid blog, whatever the hell it is, into their servers, and they search that. And that's how they can do it so quickly. So now that takes an enormous amount of electricity. AI answering questions takes even more than that. Now it's really interesting. I actually used the Microsoft Copilot just a couple days ago to answer an audio question regarding our system here. And first of all, I have to thank it because it came up, the answer was something that would have never occurred to me in a million years. And I'm pretty adept at these things. But to come up with an answer, like I said, takes an enormous amount of electricity. So now what's happened is that Microsoft has actually bought this. I know you may not believe this, but this is actually true. They have bought the former 3 Mile Island nuclear plant that's been closed for 25 years? Because they're going to start it up again because they need the electricity from that nuclear power plant to run Copilot, so you can ask Copilot questions. That's what they're going to do. What people don't realize is that there were 2 nuclear reactors on 3 Mile Island, 1 and 2, or A and B, or whatever it was. I think it was B, or the second one, that actually burned through, melted down. The first one is they took it offline, completely functional. And so that's the part, I guess what Microsoft's going to do is they're going to simply ignore number 2 and start up number 1 because it was always working in the first place. So nuclear power is the answer to all this stuff. But that said, I mean, you're talking about the amount of electricity that's going to be, it's vulgar how much this is going to use. And nuclear power is going to come back into fashion here in the United States very quickly because not only, well, first of all, it's emission free. There's no climate problems or carbon emissions regarding that. And don't even get me started on that because carbon is not a pollutant. It's the fact that people think that is just absurd. Well, that's for another time. But they're going to nuclear power is also it's very efficient, and there's you can't generate that much electricity with windmills. You just can't. I mean, the amount of electricity that's going to be used here is obscene just to run these things. But this is where society is going right now, and we're going to have to do all this stuff. There's no doubt about that. So speaking of that, so you got your robots, right? And I'm just going to throw this as an aside. Waymo is going to start running tests in Miami. Now, so far they have cars in Las Vegas and San Francisco. These are driverless taxis, and they're not charging at all because they're testing the system. But they've run so far 160,000 miles without a single accident, which is pretty impressive. But you got a driverless car. What if you got a robot who has feelings? And I'm not talking about ordinary feelings. So the way this happens is that this Japanese inventor has created an android robot that it says has feelings because it works off of biofeedback, just the way a lot of people do for their various training functions. And so it says the robot has feelings, but they're not human feelings. Oh, thank you. Just what I need. A robot who feels stuff that I don't. We had Brian Trilly on this program a few weeks ago. He wrote the book Soulless Intelligence. And, he is very adamant about the fact that robots, that AI cannot have feelings. And I agree with him. He's totally, but it never occurred to me that they could have feelings in their own freaking little world. And I suppose that's true. They can, but I'm not buying it. Thanks for listening, folks. I want to thank you for listening to our show. Tomorrow night, Davis Hunt, the editor of the Pamphleteer out of Nashville, is going to be joining us. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you, wherever you are. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care, everybody.